Before laws were carved in stone, before judges spoke sentences, before kings claimed authority, there was law, not written, not spoken, not enforced by force, but felt. The universe had order. The sun had rhythm. Time had direction. Yet something deeper held everything together. Something that did not shine, did not move, did not rule visibly. This was the invisible law, the principle that even gods could not escape. Not command, not decree, alignment. Ancient Egypt understood this truth instinctively. They did not believe order was invented by gods. They believed gods were subject to it. This is why justice stood above kings, why balance outweighed power, why excess always led to collapse. The invisible law was not morality. It did not care about intention. It cared about measure. Too much destroyed, too little weakened, balance sustained. This law could not be worshipped directly. It had no face. No temple could contain it. No prayer could bend it. Yet everything obeyed it. Stars, seasons, gods, men. This is the story of that law, not how it was written, but how it existed before writing. The invisible law did not begin as authority. It began as pattern. Before gods ruled, existence already responded to proportion. Heat expanded matter. Cold contracted it. Growth required restraint. Movement required rhythm. Nothing survived excess. Nothing endured imbalance. The first god had recognized this. The sun had embodied it, but neither created it. They aligned with it. This is the deepest truth of Egyptian cosmology. Law is not invented by power. Power is granted by alignment with law. This is why even the greatest gods were measured. They could act, but they could not act without consequence. The invisible law did not punish. It corrected. It allowed deviation, but never indefinitely. In nature, this law appeared as balance. In time, as cycle. In society, as justice. But long before it had names, it was simply necessity. The universe did not ask permission to correct imbalance. It simply did. This made the law terrifying, not because it was cruel, but because it was impartial. No plea could move it, no sacrifice could bribe it. Only alignment mattered. This is why ancient Egyptians feared disorder more than death. Death was transition. Disorder was collapse. The invisible law held the cosmos together without ever revealing itself. And because it was unseen, it was trusted. In the next chapter, this law will take form not as command, but as principle of balance. The invisible law was never a command. It did not tell the universe what to do. It revealed what the universe could not escape. Balance was not chosen. Balance was required. Before morality existed, before ethics were imagined, before judgment had language, existence already responded to proportion. Too much heat destroyed. Too much water drowned. Too much growth collapsed itself. Excess always carried its own correction. The ancients did not interpret this as punishment. They understood it as necessity. The invisible law did not oppose desire. It simply ignored it. Desire had no authority over structure. This is why Egyptian thought never framed balance as weakness. Balance was strength. Restraint was survival. In nature, balance appeared silently. Floods nourished the land, but only when they receded. Darkness restored, but only when followed by light. The Nile itself became the greatest teacher. Its rise brought life. Its excess brought ruin. Its absence brought death. Thus, balance became sacred, not because it was holy, but because it was true. The invisible law did not moralize, it measured, and measurement does not negotiate. This is why the law was invisible. Visibility invites interpretation. Invisibility enforces reality. The Egyptians did not imagine balance as equality. They imagined it as proper relation. Everything in its place. Everything in its time. A thing could be powerful and still be wrong. A thing could be weak and still be aligned. This understanding shaped their entire worldview. Kings were not above balance. Gods were not exempt. Power that exceeded measure became self-destructive. Order that hardened became brittle. Balance required flexibility. Rigidity was a form of excess. This is why the invisible law allowed movement. It was not static. It adjusted. Correction was not immediate. Sometimes imbalance lingered, but never indefinitely. The universe tolerated deviation only as long as correction remained possible. This tolerance created the illusion of freedom, but freedom was always bounded. The invisible law did not restrict choice. It restricted outcome. One could act freely, but one could not escape consequence. This principle terrified rulers. It humbled gods, because it meant authority was conditional. Alignment granted power. Misalignment revoked it. This law did not threaten. It waited, and waiting is the most patient form of power. In the next chapter, this invisible balance will acquire a name, not as invention, but as recognition. The invisible law existed long before it was named. Naming did not create it. Naming acknowledged it. The ancient Egyptians understood that words do not invent reality. They reveal what has already proven itself unavoidable. When balance became conscious, it required a symbol, not to limit it, but to remember it. Thus emerged Maat. Maat was not a goddess in the human sense. She was not born. She did not act. She did not intervene. She stood. Maat was balance made visible, truth made stable, order given form without force. This is why Maat is depicted not with weapons, not with crowns, but with a feather. The feather was not fragile, it was precise, light enough to move with the air, heavy enough to measure the heart. The heart did not fear judgment, it feared misalignment. Maat did not accuse, she revealed. This is where Egyptian thought diverges sharply from later moral systems. Right and wrong were not decreed, they were weighed. A heart heavy with excess sank by its own nature. A heart in balance rose naturally. Judgment was not revenge, it was result. The invisible law, now named, did not gain authority. It revealed its authority had always been absolute. God swore by Maat. Kings ruled in her name, but neither controlled her. Even Ra, ruler of the sky, traveled in accordance with Maat. If he failed to return, order would collapse. This was not mythology. It was cosmology expressed in symbol. Maat governed relationships, between light and dark, between flood and drought, between speech and silence. She was present when balance held, absent only when chaos dominated. The Egyptians did not pray to Maat to change fate. They prayed to align with her. This distinction is critical. Alignment is internal, command is external. The invisible law never demanded obedience. It demanded understanding. Understanding required humility. Humility required acceptance. To live in Maat was to know one's limits. This is why Egyptian ethics appear restrained. Excess was the true sin, not desire, not ambition. Excess. A king who ruled beyond measure invited collapse. A god who exceeded balance invited correction. Maat did not protect order. She was order. The law had now gained language, but it had not changed. In the next chapter, the invisible law will descend from cosmic principle to human responsibility. Because once law is named, it must be lived. The invisible law did not remain distant. Once named, it demanded embodiment. Balance could not stay abstract. It had to be lived. The Egyptians never believed humans were separate from cosmic order. They believed humans were tested by it. Not through trials imposed by gods, but through everyday alignment. To live was to constantly negotiate balance. Speech, action, silence, restraint, all were measured. Maat did not descend as a commandment, she descended as expectation. The expectation that humans would behave as part of a larger order. This is why Egyptian society emphasized harmony over dominance. A loud voice disrupted balance. A greedy hand invited correction. An unjust word distorted alignment. Justice was not vengeance. It was restoration. The invisible law did not punish wrongdoing immediately. It allowed imbalance to reveal itself. Corruption rotted from within. Excess consumed its own foundation. This made Egyptian ethics subtle. There were no absolute prohibitions. There were consequences. A man could lie, but the lie would unbalance relations. A ruler could oppress, but oppression weakened legitimacy. Everything returned, sometimes slowly, sometimes violently, but always inevitably. This understanding created a culture of restraint, not fear-based obedience, but awareness-based behavior. To act against Maat was to act against stability, and stability was survival. This is why scribes, judges, and officials were not enforcers of law. They were guardians of balance. Their role was to restore proportion. The invisible law entered contracts, disputes, inheritance, speech, not as text, but as principle. Truth was not what benefited the speaker. It was what preserved balance. Even emotion was subject to measure. Anger was not forbidden. Excessive anger was destructive. Love was not idealized. It was regulated by duty and harmony. This worldview made Egyptian society appear rigid to outsiders. In truth, it was fragile aware. They understood how easily imbalance destroyed worlds. The invisible law did not promise happiness. It promised continuity. To live within Maat was to accept limits. Limits preserved life. This acceptance extended upward. Kings were not above the law. They embodied it temporarily. If a king ruled in excess, famine followed. If justice failed, the land suffered. These were not metaphors. They were believed as natural consequence. The human world became the proving ground of the invisible law. In the next chapter, this law will rise again, not in life, but in death, because balance does not end with breath. Death did not end obligation. For the Egyptians, death was not release. It was exposure. Life allowed adjustment. Death removed excuses. The invisible law followed the soul beyond breath, beyond flesh, beyond memory. What was hidden in life became visible in death. This is why judgment did not terrify the innocent. It terrified the unbalanced. The Egyptians did not imagine death as a trial imposed by gods. They imagined it as consequence revealed. The heart was not interrogated. It was weighed, not against accusation, against balance. The feather of Maat did not judge intention. It measured alignment. A heart heavy with excess did not fail because it was evil. It failed because it was dense. This is crucial. Judgment was not moral. It was structural. The soul did not plead. It did not bargain. There was nothing to argue. Weight does not debate. The invisible law did not need witnesses. The soul carried its own evidence. This belief reshaped life itself. If judgment was inevitable, alignment became urgent. Virtue was not heroism. It was moderation. The Egyptians did not fear hell. They feared disintegration. To be devoured was not punishment. It was collapse. Continuity was the reward. Not pleasure, not paradise. Continuity. To exist eternally, one had to remain balanced. This made death meaningful. It transformed mortality into evaluation. The invisible law revealed its final authority here. Even gods respected this moment. No god could alter the scale. To interfere would destroy order itself. Thus, law stood above compassion, above power, above desire. This truth shaped Egyptian funerary culture, not as superstition, but as preparation. Words spoken in life were measured in death. Actions echoed. Silence weighed. The invisible law did not forgive. It did not condemn. It revealed. And revelation is irreversible. This made death the most honest state. No performance, no deception, only alignment. The universe, through death, proved that balance was not symbolic. It was absolute. In the next chapter, this law will confront its greatest test, power. Because when authority grows, balance is most at risk. Power does not create imbalance. Power reveals it. The invisible law had governed nature. It had measured lives. It had weighed souls beyond death. But its greatest challenge was never chaos. It was authority. When power concentrates, excess becomes tempting. What is possible begins to feel permissible. The Egyptians understood this danger instinctively. They did not fear power itself. They feared unmeasured power. Kings were not gods. They were temporary vessels of order. Their authority did not originate within them. It flowed through them. This distinction was vital. A king who believed himself above balance invited collapse. The invisible law did not remove kings. It tested them. A ruler could command armies, but could not command the Nile. He could decree taxes, but could not decree fertility. If power aligned with balance, the land prospered. If power exceeded measure, the land suffered. Famine was not seen as punishment. It was interpreted as signal. The law did not accuse rulers publicly. It responded through reality. This made governance terrifying, not because of rebellion, but because of inevitability. The Egyptians believed that injustice distorted the fabric of the world. Truth bent the land back into harmony. This is why the pharaoh was called Lord of Maat, not owner, guardian. To rule was to constantly prove alignment. Daily rituals were not superstition. They were recalibration. The king did not pray for dominance. He prayed for balance. Power was allowed only while it served order. Once it served ego, it dissolved. This belief restrained tyranny, not by rebellion, by fear of imbalance. Even gods respected this boundary. Myths show deities punished not for cruelty, but for excess. Power that grew unchecked threatened cosmic stability. The invisible law did not tolerate permanence. Everything powerful had to remain temporary. This is why Egyptian authority appears repetitive. Renewal rituals, coronations repeated, symbols reaffirmed. Power needed constant legitimization. Without it, authority decayed. The law was patient. It did not strike quickly, but once correction began, it was unstoppable. This made humility the greatest political virtue. Not mercy, not generosity, humility. Because humility acknowledged limitation. The invisible law had now proven itself superior to gods, to kings, to death. Nothing escaped alignment. In the next chapter, this law will confront its final paradox. If balance governs everything, why does chaos still exist? If balance governs all things, why does chaos endure? This question haunted every civilization that believed in order. Egypt did not avoid it. Egypt answered it. The invisible law was not designed to eliminate chaos. It was designed to contain it. Chaos was never the enemy. Chaos was the origin. Before balance existed, before order stabilized, chaos made possibility real. Without chaos, nothing could emerge. The Egyptians understood that destruction was not the opposite of order. Excess was. Chaos, when bounded, became renewal. Floodwaters destroyed villages, but nourished fields. Storms shattered calm, but restored equilibrium. The invisible law allowed chaos to exist within limits. To remove chaos entirely would freeze existence. This is why Egyptian myth never depicts the final annihilation of chaos. It depicts perpetual struggle. Order does not win once. It wins continuously. The serpent of chaos was never slain forever. It was repelled, again and again. This eternal tension preserved vitality. Without opposition, order stagnates. Without resistance, balance hardens. The law did not fear chaos. It measured it. Too much chaos destroyed. Too little chaos suffocated. The universe needed instability to remain alive. This realization is what made Egyptian cosmology remarkably modern. They did not dream of perfection. They aimed for sustainability. Chaos tested the strength of order. Order proved itself by surviving chaos. The invisible law was not fragile. It was adaptive. This is why rituals were repeated endlessly, not to banish chaos, but to remind order of its duty. Chaos was allowed to approach, never to rule. This tension shaped Egyptian thought about evil. Evil was not absolute. It was imbalance. A world without chaos would be lifeless. A world ruled by chaos would collapse. Between these extremes, balance lived. The invisible law governed this boundary. The Egyptians did not seek paradise. They sought continuity, and continuity demands friction. In the next chapter, the invisible law will face its final embodiment, legacy, because balance is meaningless if it cannot be transmitted. Balance that cannot endure is illusion. The invisible law was eternal, but its expression was not. Civilizations rise, kings fall, gods fade from memory. Only balance remains. The Egyptians understood this with rare clarity. Order was not secured by strength. It was secured by transmission. What one generation aligned, the next had to maintain. Balance was never inherited automatically. It was taught. This is why Egyptian culture was obsessed with memory, monuments, rituals, texts, repetition. They were not nostalgic. They were defensive. Memory was a shield against imbalance. The invisible law did not pass biologically. It passed culturally, through instruction, through example, through failure remembered. This made legacy a moral responsibility, not glory, not fame. Responsibility. To forget balance was to invite chaos. The Egyptians did not trust innovation blindly. Change was acceptable only when aligned. This is why tradition mattered more than novelty, not because they feared progress, but because progress without balance destroys continuity. The law demanded stewardship, not ownership. Each generation held balance temporarily. This is why rulers were depicted offering Maat back to the gods. They were not granting balance. They were returning it. Legacy was fragile. One unbalanced reign could unravel centuries of alignment. Thus, education became sacred. Scribes were guardians. Priests were calibrators. Judges were restorers. Even architecture was legacy. Temples aligned not only with the sun, but with memory. The law extended forward. It asked, "Will you preserve what you did not create?" This question haunted Egypt, and it should haunt every civilization. The invisible law did not promise permanence. It demanded vigilance. Balance could survive centuries, but only through humility. This is why Egypt endured, not because it was powerful, but because it remembered. Yet even memory fades, and no civilization is immune. The law prepared for this too. In the final chapter, the invisible law will confront its most sobering truth. No order is eternal in form, only in principle. Nothing endures forever in form. Civilizations crumble, gods lose their names, temples become sand, but balance does not perish. This was the final truth the Egyptians understood. Order was never guaranteed by permanence. It was guaranteed by principle. The invisible law did not promise survival. It promised coherence. Egypt did not fall because it forgot its gods. It fell because alignment weakened. Memory fractured, balance eroded. This was not failure. It was consequence. The law did not abandon Egypt. Egypt drifted from the law. This is why ruins are not tragic. They are instructional. They reveal what happens when alignment dissolves. The invisible law does not mourn civilizations. It absorbs them. What was balanced contributes to continuity. What was excessive collapses into lesson. This is why the law is terrifying, not because it is cruel, but because it is indifferent to identity. Names change, forms change, principles remain. The Egyptians knew their order would not last forever. They did not seek immortality. They sought meaningful endurance. Their legacy was not dominance, it was understanding. The invisible law does not belong to Egypt. Egypt belonged to it, and so does every civilization that follows. Whenever power exceeds measure, collapse approaches. Whenever memory fails, imbalance grows. Whenever order hardens, chaos returns. This is not myth, it is pattern. The law still governs. It has no temples now, no priests, no hymns, but it remains visible in consequence. Societies rise and fall according to alignment. Individuals flourish or fracture according to balance. The invisible law has never left. It has only become unnamed again. This completes the cycle. Law emerges unseen, is named, is lived, is forgotten, and remains. Before gods ruled, before kings judged, before laws were written, there was balance. And after all names fade, after all symbols dissolve, after all orders collapse, there will still be balance. The universe does not demand belief, it demands alignment. The invisible law does not ask to be obeyed, it asks to be understood, and understanding is the rarest form of power.